So I'm a huge Brian K. Vaughan fan. His comics just absolutely leap off the page. So is it like hard? Is it easy to adapt his stuff for long form television? Or?
It's absolutely both, because I'm also a huge Brian K. Vaughan fan, so you really don't want to, fuck it up. 'Cause it's so good, it's so iconic, it's so loved, rightly. But then he is just so concise with his dialogue as well. The tone is all there, the characters are there, the world is there. So you're starting from such a great place in trying to do a television show, and so it felt like a huge advantage to be starting with a Brian K. book to refer back to. But at the same time, there was like a lot of opportunity to do something fresh and bigger, and that kind of went beyond what he's done.
So is there something you'd say was like the hardest to either adapt, or that you were worried you would mess up for like comic fans that are trying to come into this, that maybe are worried about their favorite characters?
Yeah, I mean, I come from this show *Halt and Catch Fire* most prominently, and so what I've done is a lot of character drama.
Yeah.
But this is a show that has giant robots and time travel and these huge sci-fi elements that I think have to be great and really deliver at the same time. So how to not sell out the character while also like keeping the adventure, the scale of it, with what it should be. That was a big concern coming in, but I think we did it. Amazon gave us the monetary support we needed to kind of go big when we wanted to go big, and then I think that made the personal moments land even more.
So you mentioned *Halt and Catch Fire*, so that had different periods to it, just like this does. Is that something that you were able to use your experience from that?
Absolutely, because I think it kind of teaches you that if you're going to write a scene and it's going to walk outside in 1988, like, oh my gosh, it just got 10 times more expensive. So it was a good production thing, but at the same time, I think I also knew what I didn't want the show to be, which was this kind of surface level, jokey version of the 80s, that was the kind of thing like the Goldbergs does well, but I think we wanted to be something a little more Stand By Me, a little more Wes Craven, a little more, this was a fraught time, at the same time it was a joyous time, and I think that's something I learned on *Halt*, was to try to show all the colors of the era you're working in. And we're in '88 for a little while, but we don't stay. Yeah.
Is there was it a conscious effort to be involved with Paper Girls, or how did you come to be involved in adapting this and putting it on TV?
Well, one of my great mentors is a writer on The Lord of the Rings. Had come over here to work, and told me that Paper Girls was being made over here. I'm not an enormous comic fan. I worked at Skylight Books in Los Angeles for a long time, but I would say I've read every word Brian K. Vaughan ever wrote, and so the fact that they were doing it was like, all right, I'd like to get in. Let me see what I can do, and if the auspices are right, and they were, to their great credit, they took the casting seriously. They didn't try to age them up. They didn't try to soften it down and take out the bad words. The fact that Amazon was committed to doing it with the jagged edges was kind of what I needed to hear, and they were.
In terms of the differences between the comic and the show, how do you guys arrive at those decisions? Because some things in the show are kind of like one-to-one from the comic, and then there's also some huge divergences from the storyline.
I think time almost made most of those decisions for us, because the comic I think happens over 3 or 4 nights. That whole 30-book run is 3 or 4 nights. And I think if we kept up that speed in the show, it would be pretty dizzying, and we would eat through, not to mention we'd have to go to outer space and then the prehistoric, and we'd have to go so many places so quickly. And I did think there was an opportunity to have longer versions of some of those conversations, and to add some characters around the edges that would kind of fill out their worlds. The backstory of these girls is so well suggested, but at the same time getting to meet, Mac's brother, or someone that KJ is in a relationship in the future, or other people that are suggested by the books but that we don't get to spend time with, seemed like a major chance we had that they didn't, because they had to keep it moving. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about casting of the girls and what that kind of process was like?
Yeah, so that was this huge international search, because at first there was this idea that maybe they needed to be older, or maybe we needed to get a name or somebody you'd recognize to help sell the show. And to everyone's credit, we were able to kind of dial back from that and focus on getting real girls. We wanted to get girls that were capable of doing this kind of adult dialogue, frankly, but also that didn't seem like actresses. It didn't seem too Disney or CW, and I think in the 4 girls we have these archetypes to proceed from, but at the same time I think they're each a little different. And so for my money we found some really special, kind of unknowns. I don't think for much longer, but it was that casting is the rock on which this all rests, and that took forever, and we saw hundreds of young actresses for this, and I think we found the right ones.
So when you were deciding what to put in the first season, how did you decide where to cut it off in the story?
I think you start out with an endpoint in mind, but then you leave yourself flexible if you find better things or like little side treks you want to go on the journey. So we thought we knew where the first season would end. I'd say we actually got a little further than we thought we would. It isn't, though, like one-to-one with the books. And I think we also asked ourselves where the character arcs were ending, that they start as complete strangers to one another, and this is the story of them becoming friends, even if it's kind of a fraught journey. And so I think we ended up in the right place, but it was certainly something we had to find as we went, and things we thought might take a long time sometimes went fast, and things that we thought would go fast sometimes we wanted to stay in a whole episode. So that's just the discovery you go through in the writer's room.
What was the makeup of the writer's room? What is there,
Yeah, so it's all female other than me, and it was important to us to have both, diversity in terms of ethnicity, sexuality, and age. So we have writers in our room that are in their 20s, we have writers in our room that are in their 60s. We felt like every point of view we were trying to cast for, we needed to have represented in the writing as well. It's also all female directors, and so we thought that was, just essential to kind of telling this story in a new and honest way. And I kind of just lucked into being along for that ride. But there are certainly days when I just shut up and I go, that sounds amazing. Let's do that. And I think that's how it probably should be.